Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different here for this one. Um, as you all know, I released this funny little Fnaf video a couple weeks ago, and right after making this video, I started working on another Fnaf video, and I have this problem when it comes to writing, which is like I have a great idea, and then I get like part way through it, and then I just drop the ball, and it becomes very hard for me to pick it back up. Um, so I thought it would be fun to basically have a discussion with my good friend Linguistic Spaceship.
Hello, I'm Linguistic Spaceship. Um, I'm very smart, and I know a lot about the FNAF lore. I've been a fan of the game since the first one back in 2014, and I've basically caught up with everything to the current day. So, guess that's good enough introduction, wouldn't you say?
I think so. I will say, like, so there's this interesting thing. Like, I did not care a lot about FNAF up until I saw security. Like, I saw the story for Help Wanted, and I thought, man, that was cool. That's such a cool story. And then I saw what Security Breach was like. Like, I saw gameplay of it, and I was like, this looks like a really fun game. I'll actually try that out. And then I didn't because I often don't. I just take a while and then get back to it on my own time. Um, and we had made a joke in a Discord server we're in, the Y2K Discord server, uh, where we were joking about FNAF Fridays, where we would
Yeah,
just
joking.
talk about FNAF because linguistic has a lot of interest in it, and especially has a lot of fun things to say about FNAF 4 that a lot of people don't talk about in videos.
Yeah, 4 is my favorite game, and I think it's probably like the most um, talked about game, like even indirectly, even when it comes to security breach, which we'll get to soon. Like people won't shut up about FNAF 4.
Yeah, and I there's this thing that I think is really funny about the way that I approach consuming media, um, or how I like even analyze it to a bit, and it's really funny because linguistic got essentially a first-hand experience. So like I hadn't watched a lot of videos about security breach. Like I knew about um the CDs, the retro CDs. I knew about that, and that was really
From
about it.
MAtpat, I assume.
Um, I don't even know if it was him. It might have been a completely different video. I don't know. Um, I'm certain it was a different video. I don't remember what. I don't remember why I watched it or whatever. Um, and I thought they were cool. And that's basically all the context I had towards going into playing the game for the first time. And so, like, we were joking about FNAF Friday, and I bought Help Wanted and played it for a little bit. Enjoyed my time with it. It's a fun game. I think it has the coolest story out of all the games, in my opinion. Just because I think it's such a fun concept. And then one time I was just like, all right, I'll just play Security Breach. Like, why not? And the call became very interesting very quickly. Um, because overall, my I like Security Breach. I guess is the best way to put it. I could get why people don't like it, but I thought it was cool.
Yeah, it seems like all you hear about it is how it sucks or how it mishandles the lore or whatever.
Yeah. Um. So like, I believe this was like the first session because we played it a couple times, and then I hadn't played it for a while since then. But the first day, I believe like as I'm getting to the part where you're talking to Freddy, and you're like about to jump inside the Freddy mech and walk around the building a bit before Vanessa stops you. I believe that is the point when I asked Linguistic this question. And I was like, what if Gregory had played the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience?
Yeah, and it wasn't something I had even considered, to be honest. And I guess I'm not looking too deeply in, like, I don't know, the subreddit or like Discord or anything, but I have watched like a lot of theory videos on YouTube. And like when it comes to the identity of Gregory or 46, it's not something I've even been heard really discussed before, where it feels like they just kind of ignore the VR game in context with that.
Yeah, and it it was just funny because at the time you were like, I don't think I've heard anybody say that. And then later on, we get to talking about it again because I'm like, I feel like I was onto something. I was like, now hold on, this just keeps making more and more sense as we get into this. And we like read over the original tapes, the CD, and even scouring through the emails in Fnaf AR, which I can bring up this timeline I made of these events, just because I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I find this all really funny in a few different ways because essentially I did some of this in my head when I was playing the game, but a lot of it just fits into place afterwards. So obviously, like the original tapes have to take place first, and in those tapes, they mention specifically that there's Jeremy was an employee who suddenly just ripped his own face off with the or cut his own face off with the what is it the
I don't know. It's like one of those things you cut like paper or something with.
yeah because he worked on the design department, and then she mentions that they are being rushed off the project. And then her last tape kind of contradicts the thing she said before, where she was saying, "Hey, don't gather all my tapes, or else you'll have this glitch. You'll summon glitch trap, and it'll be a bad time." And the last tape says, "Well, maybe you should grab all the tapes, and maybe you should do this thing where you let him influence you."
Yes, super fishy.
And I think it's just the first instance of glitch trap influencing some. Well, the second instance technically, because Jeremy would have been the first. Um, and then later you get the Dreadbear DLC, and in that, you hear the what is it called, the hesitant follower or whatever, reluctant follower. That's what it was. Talking about how they made the new suit and that they would appreciate it. And a lot of people assume that that means that the player character, the one that you're playing as, is saying that. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. Um, I don't have one way or another about it. I do find it interesting that the glitch trap, like, outfit is different from the mask that you find in Dreadbear.
Yes, because like it implies that it's not Vanessa, or like it represents someone else.
Yeah, and then like that mask is different from Vanny, and when like in the first trailer, it has that zoom in, and then it shows Vanny in a completely different costume. Um, and her costume is definitely close to what the mask was, but it's not exactly the same. You
Yeah,
know.
notably, like the pattern, like the colors are very different. And something else I want to add too is that I feel like when people talk about glitch trap possessing people, they act as if it's not as common as it is, where it's like the only person that is possessed is this one person, which is Vanessa, and like it's kind of forgotten that in VR there's like multiple people. Like there's Jeremy, there's the tape girl, and also Vanessa. Like there's more than one person is the point.
Yeah, so
Like
they've
it's
already
a far
established
bigger scale.
they established three characters that have been influenced. And one of MAtPat's first theories about this is the cult of William Afton, where it's like, oh, there's going to be all these people that are basically brainwashed, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what's happening. We see that happen in the game. That's what the game's about. Um, then we get to the AR emails, and the AR emails are really interesting. First off, because a lot of them didn't get released. Though Scott said he did expect people to data mine them out anyway. I think that there's, circumstances that made it to where these didn't get released the way that they were intended to. But I don't think that they aren't canon, you know? I think that these are more canon than the books, basically. Um,
Yeah, they fit a lot more than the books too.
yeah, and I feel like they have so many details that are really interesting and tells you so much about the characters. Um,
But despite that, people focus on the books more than these AR emails. Like I feel like no one talks about these except for like Fnaf did a bit,
yeah.
but that's about it.
And I also find it interesting how people tend to get a couple of details wrong about these. So I separated these by different categories. There's places. There's different places that these emails are coming from, and it's a little hard to discern by the way that they're formatted because they aren't formatted in a way that they're released. There is a company that was contracted to scan the animatronics in. And oddly, this is something that Tape Girl mentioned. So at some point before the AR emails, Glitch Trap was scanned in and people knew about it or whatever. And it seems that Tape Girl was working for the same company that is mentioned in these emails because they both say the same thing. They're just given these animatronics and they're just scanning them in. That's all they're told to do. They're not really given a whole lot of information as to why. And then suddenly, and this is one of the emails that is released, December 1st, all of the contracts for all fazbear, like, outside contractors are terminated. And so everything has to, like, get repossessed and go back to the main company. This is just an odd event to take place because in the opening to Help Wanted, it is expressed that they're trying to reestablish their brand identity and fix the situation after what Scott Cawthon, quote unquote, did to Fazbear Entertainment.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's important to note it's Scott Cawthon quotes, like you said, because Scott did confirm that it's not supposed to be literally him.
Right, right. It's some independent game developer
Like it's
represented by.
important, yeah. It's important that it's not literally him. It's a
Yeah,
character representing him in a way.
and I think that like the point of that is not really supposed to be. It is Scott that they're talking about. It's a little bit of a joke there, but because Scott put like pictures of himself and his family in the previous games, it's supposed to be like that is a whole character within the universe. Um, and that character and the previous games are specifically what it's talking about. Um, so you reach this point where you're supposed to like. I feel like when they tell you that, you're supposed to go, okay, so maybe the events of the games, like the gameplay that you do, didn't literally happen. Because with Help Wanted, it wouldn't make sense if the problem was, oh, these animatronics are coming alive at night and eating people, and we're losing random security guards. It would be weird to go and make that game again. But if you look at Help Wanted, what's noticeably not there, even though it's almost faithful remakes of the first three games, is the mini games. None of the like lore mini games are present at all in Help Wanted. Um, so I feel like that's kind of the rogue part of the indie developer, and I think that's where people kind of missed what the story was telling them. Is that's where the truth of what happened and what they're trying to cover up lies. And a lot of people seem to take the fact that there's even a cover up to assume that the corporation is evil and that Afton is already involved again. I don't find that to be entirely true. Um, there's plenty of reasons to try to like revive an old brand that might have had, some conflict in the past, and it's because of nostalgia primarily, and
And the money that comes with it.
and the money that comes with it. So I can see like, oh yeah, some venture capitalist guy goes, oh, I remember this when I was growing up. Here, let me take this and then make this new thing with it. Um, so back to the emails. There is a group of emails that are going back and forth with the company that got their contract terminated. But there, for some reason, there's a virus that was in one of the boards that was scanned that is still affecting their systems. And what happens is a technician from Fazbear Entertainment, somebody in IT, responds to them and solves the issue, basically. Some of the people that have dissected this story points out that they're V underscore A is who does it. I think this is a detail specifically there to mislead you, and I think it's intentionally misleading. It's supposed to be a. I think it's Patient 46. I think it's them hacking into the system, and given some of the story details with Lewis's emails, he says that, oh, it appears that somebody had something from your computer did this hacking, but we've seen that Vanessa and Fanny aren't really capable of that. They don't know things about computers. Um, and I think that it is intentionally a moment of somebody using those initials to blame somebody else. Basically, to draw suspicion to somebody else.
And like the person that would probably do that would be 46, like you said, right?
Right. 46 is a little bit of a shithead.
Yeah, and they do have like a big connection to Vanessa in the tapes, which
Yes.
is why a lot of people would say like, oh, 46 is Vanny or something, which I don't think is the case, but like there's a reason those details are there. Like they have some sort of obsession or like relationship with Vanessa.
Right. Another detail that becomes extremely important is that if you go through all of, and there's some random emails that have like employee names, transfers, layoffs, and then also there's a few emails that are like tech support logs, basically. And in that, there's a few other accounts that have like letter underscore letter. None of them line up with names of any employee at Fazbear Entertainment. So it is a bit weird to jump to the conclusion that because of the one that has the same initials as somebody else, that it has to be that person. Because it seems to be something else entirely, which is these users' names. Because it doesn't match any other character that's established. Um, so here I point out the next big event, which is mentioned in Lewis's email, and it's mentioned in the CDs, which is Vanessa ordering things to make the costume. And this is important because this is around the time of whenever she mentions it in Dreadbear. So it's still before the release of the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience to some extent. But that's what we're given. That is a major event to base everything off of. And because of the tapes being sequential, everything else has to take place before it, more or less. What gets crazy about a lot of this, and I mentioned this in my video, is that Gregory is patient 46. And that's something that we all kind of agree with some contention from everyone
Yeah.
I've seen. But if that's true, what is the context? Why is this conversation happening? And a lot of people have a lot of weird answers that don't align with what's literally said in the tapes or the CDs. Because in the CDs and in ones that are 46 specific, it's mentioned that the person that's doing therapy works for Fazbear Entertainment. And they're the same therapists on both CDs, and they take place in a very specific order. And it's some people might try to say that they might be out of order, but I think it's almost impossible for them to be in a different order than
Yeah.
what's shown.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know what details would even suggest that. Like they seem to be in order, and it would be weird for the numbers to just not be true.
Yeah, it just would be very difficult to try to say that they're in a different order or have a different sequence.
Yeah, and then like how would you prove what order they'd be in?
Yeah.
Because there's so little details that would really suggest that in the first place.
And it's notable that in 46's tapes, they do speak to the therapist because one of them mentions them speaking to them directly, though we never hear it. And of course, these are snippets of therapy sessions. And so the thing is I'm pretty sure 46 is established as a hacker. We know that. They do want to be found by some means because of a lot of breadcrumbs they're leaving around. But I think that's a subconscious thing. And I think the main thing is that it's like the reason you don't hear 46 speak at all, outside of obviously the creators of the game trying to instill a bit of mystery into the game, is because they deleted it. And part of them resisted it to not just outright delete the tapes or the CDs entirely, but just themselves from them. And then Vanessa has a very suspicious promotion. So something that has always bothered me about a lot of theories around this is they assume that these tapes take place in the pizza plex. But in Vanessa's last one, it's mentioned that she is getting transferred to a different location. And through the duffel bags, the layoffs, and transfers email, it all says that she suddenly gets transferred to Freddy Fazbear, the Pizzaplex. And
Which is a often overlooked detail, as you point out in your original video, that I also was just shocked no one had really talked about.
yeah, so it's like, and for Vanessa to have been influenced, she worked in security. I know somebody pointed out that, oh, she had an interest in IT, so maybe she worked in IT and this was retcon. No, she didn't have, like, she had an interest in it for different reasons. I think that's Glitch Trap influenced interest, and then her friend worked in IT for a time. Which some people say that it's retconned because of the therapy recordings, and I don't know that that's true. He may have got transferred because throughout his emails, he is definitely flirting with Vanessa, and he is not efficient at his job at pointing out these really problematic behaviors that she's doing.
So, just like me.
Yeah, he is a simp. So it's not pointed out. So these have to be happening at Fazbear Entertainment, the company itself. And what has to be happening, and the only way this makes sense to me, is that after the game got through the company before, which would be, if you want to keep this in fiction, Silver Parasol Games. After it got done with them, and then they all had their contracts terminated, I assume their systems probably, after contracting the glitch trap virus, it ended up I don't know where I was going with that. Anyways, basically after they had done that, Fazbear took everything back, and they had to go and finish the game themselves. And at that point, that's where you have people like Vanessa who played it. And then after she plays it, she obviously gets influenced and creates the altered persona, Vanny. And that's where it gets tricky for 46 to be Gregory. Because why would a child be at Fazbear Entertainment? And there's only a couple of, as a professional sense, because the therapists talk to 46 as if they all understand that they're at a workplace, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's already a weird detail that they're seemingly a part of this business while also being a kid from all the language used towards him.
And so the only way that works out is if he's like a beta tester, or he's focus group testing, or something like that. And I'm assuming, and the only way that a lot of this makes sense, and it's in one of these specific emails, Lewis mentions that Vanessa just became unresponsive suddenly. At that point, no matter how shady of your business, you're going to try to investigate what's going on. And if you have multiple people You know, if you didn't care about it before because it was at a different company and it was their business and they were being weird about it and you kid it over and then suddenly you see that there's a problem and it's affecting people, isn't that about the point that you start an investigation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when one of the people influenced is a child who you had come in for focus group testing or beta testing or whatever, because that's one of the few instances that a child would be on a like in a professional setting like this.
Yeah, and also in terms of the Fazbear brand, like the whole controversy they had is what happened to the children that went there.
Right. So at that point, it makes sense that they're starting to have these therapy sessions. And then you have to note that every time, regardless of if it's Vanessa or Gregory in these tapes, every time the therapist starts to pick at what might be going on about them being influenced by Glitch Trap or what they're trying to do because of the influence, they're replaced suddenly. At points when Vanessa doesn't even realize why a different therapist is there than the last one. Uh, that's because they were getting too close to the truth that they needed to get rid of. Um, and it just makes sense at that point. You let's see, where do we go from here? After that, so if Gregory is the hacker, 46 is the hacker, and it's this kid that has been indoctrinated into working for Glitch Trap, and we see more evidence that there's a hacker that is making things happen because I know one video pointed this out where it was certain it's probably Fnaf, certain shipping dates in the AR emails coincide with like notes on the walls in Security Breach. And it would make sense that they're trying to redirect specific animatronics for William Afton's plan. Um, Another aspect to this is like at this point, William Afton is digitized. He's this digital, soul. He's Glitch Trap. When we see him as Burn Trap, he has his complete endoskeleton replaced with a newer model. And I'm assuming that Glitch Trap is now in that endoskeleton. And we know that there's 9 missing people, and part of them is likely all of these therapists. And we know that William Afton does this thing where he's trying to bind souls to robot bodies so they can live forever. So it seems very likely that like this is essentially what's going on. After these people become influenced by him, and we see Vanessa. Vanessa's resistant against it. Um, and I think even one of the tapes points out a detail because they're talking about her father, but they use the name Bill, right? And Bill is a nickname for people that are named William. And I don't think it's at all her actual father. I think it's kind of something that's been
Yeah,
rewritten.
that wouldn't make sense at all for him to be their father, like their actual father.
Um, but she says that I have him compartmentalized. And if you take that to mean the influence that Glitch Trap has over Vanessa, it basically tells you about her split personality with Vanny. All of her Glitch Trap personality, influence, control is compartmentalized into Vanny. And it appears as though Gregory has a similar thing going on. Because at the beginning of the game, he doesn't really remember anything. He doesn't know what's going on. He isn't familiar with anything. But if he was this hacker and all of this stuff beforehand, he would know, right? Well, it's because they're two different people in the same body. And I think it's what has frustrated me with a lot of these FNAF theories is that a lot of them, especially MAtPats, do this thing where they are going back to like earlier FNAF games and then going, okay, well, Gregory should be the crying child. And then, oh, this character is this other character. Um, and the only problem I have with that is that you have this entire narrative built up about people being possessed by Glitch Trap, being influenced and doing his bidding, that it would be silly to do something different, you know?
Yeah, it's like a completely different narrative that just comes out of left field because it was mentioned in the books once.
Yeah. And I think what has really gotten to me about this is I made this video 2 weeks ago, and uh, as I've explained, like it was just me coming to the game with very little, you know, and immediately going, "Oh, but what if this was the case?" And then went, "Oh, wow, there seems to be a lot of merit to this in the way that the story is written." Um, and it feels like only recently people have even started to getting close to the thing I suddenly realized because I didn't read any of the books. I didn't read the leaks about the books. I don't care about the books, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't care about them either.
They look fun, and if I was a middle schooler, well, when I was in middle school, I was reading a series of unfortunate events. If I was an elementary schooler, I'd probably like them. Because that's around the time I would have read Goosebumps stuff. But it seems like that's the audience for it, and it seems like they kind of put details in there that are supposed to get you thinking about the games a bit more. And you sent me a video earlier today that was somebody reading through the book, and then they were like, essentially, because they read through the book, they landed on my theory. Um, but they're still weird about it because they said that you have to like ignore certain parts of the story. And I don't think that you do at all. I think it's apparent in the story itself without having to have a book spell it out for you.
Yeah, but like the thing that they were ignoring wasn't even like what the story was saying. It was that, oh, the translations were saying this.
Oh yeah, we could talk about the translation. So I think what some people don't get is that when you go to translate something, you send it off to a third party, and oftentimes you're not giving them a lot of context for certain things. Um, and especially with the tapes, they're already given the context that one of the tapes is the conversations with Vanessa, who is female, and so it's really easy for a translation error to occur there. I don't think necessarily them being female in other translations, because I feel like you have to look at this story as being English written first. uh if it was a Japanese series, I could get going back to different translations to see how a pronoun might have been used here or there. But um
I feel like it's not like a great thing to base things off of.
yeah, I also think it's also odd to like it's worse than what people have. Okay, what I find weird about this is that people are quick to sort of push aside the cut dialogue where Gregory is mentioned to have cut his arm, but they really want to focus on this female pronoun in a translation to a different language.
Yeah, yeah, and it also happens kind of in the reverse where people will look at the "you're broken" line and see it as, well, it's just censorship, and it's like, well, so many ways you could say a thing, so it's
Yeah.
interesting that they make it specifically that.
Yeah, it's definitely like the use of the "you're broken" line is definitely something where they like, we want this game to be T for teen because it's a large audience. Um, but instead of just going, "Oh, you're hurt," they chose "you're broken," and it's a deliberate choice, and there's no way you could say otherwise. um, there's a few more things I find frustrating. Like, I talk to people about this, and they go, "Well, maybe this will be explained in Ruin." It's like, yeah, but I feel like it's pretty well explained already.
Yeah, I mean, even in the Ruin teaser, it has like Gregory on the screens and it says "help me,"
Yeah,
as if like they hacked it to make it say that message, which already connects Gregory even more to
right.
his hacking abilities.
I guess there's a few other things we can go over. In my video, I talk about how, the line where fazbear says that, or Glamrock Freddy says that Gregory looks different. I point out, well, he also says that now he can see Vanessa. So it would make sense that part of the things that Gregory had to hack was to make, and it would just make things easier for the animatronics to ignore people who are influenced in a certain way by Afton. If you want to think that as like Afton's body hopping between people, that works fine, I guess. I don't particularly care for either way. It's just like, it's odd that he can see Vanessa fine, but he cannot see Vanny, and because he points out that Gregory looks different with the different eyes that allows him to see Vanny, it makes sense that there might be a connection there. Um, as far as Vanessa causing like a glitchy effect whenever she's around, like that's definitely a gameplay first feature in my mind. Um, but I also think that to an extent that it may like, I feel like it does this nice thing narratively where it kind of acts as a trauma response because Gregory doesn't really know what's going on with Vanny. He just knows that he doesn't trust Vanessa. And if getting in contact with somebody who's influenced by the person who brainwashed you, that kind of makes sense that there might be a glitchy visual effect.
It's also another place where people get distracted by the books,
Oh, yeah.
or they don't know how to explain it in the context for the rest of the story. So they go, oh, well, what does the book say? Oh, illusion discs. Okay, Vanny's carrying an illusion disc, and that's why this thing is happening. And, you know,
Yeah, despite
there's
that
like so many
there's,
other things it could be.
yeah, and then that even has its own contradictions because if like, what's funny about a lot of theories around FNAF, specifically to me, is how much they require just new writing. Like, okay, if it's a sound illusion disc, okay. Well, robots could see, when robots would look at the sound illusion discs in the books, they would see the same things that humans would see. Okay, well, if that's the case, then she should just be invisible. Okay, well, what if it's specifically honed to do this thing? Or what if it's this sound illusion earpiece instead? Oh, okay, well, how about it's not talked about at all in any of the games about sound illusion discs or sound illusion earpieces or whatever? And how about we like look what's already there and talk about that? Um, so yeah, I don't know if I'm doing another FNAF theory. This is basically just a commentary track on my last video and a rest in peace for the video I thought about making because it just it's really difficult for me sometimes to make these. Um,
Yeah, and it feels like it's almost like the thing you're planning was just a sequel to something rather than being its own theory, which
right.
has this kind of frustration towards it.
Yeah, and the other thing that like, and the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to get it out before MAtPat's newest like the third video. That's why I did the first one because I thought, I think he mentioned that he was having a break before the third video in the second one, and I was like, oh, I want to get this out just in case he does release it. And then 2 weeks went by and he didn't release the video. And I was like, okay. And then now I'm seeing some people suddenly come around to the theory that I presented. And it's like, okay, let me like explain it a bit more, give a lot more context and like an actual timeline of things so that like you can compare it to whatever MAtPat puts out this week or next week, whenever that happens, because I think what I feel or what I thought, my theory of what's taking place, makes a lot of sense and works off of what's established in the narratives.
Yeah, I mean, like what you say about people rewriting stuff is like especially true. It's something people often do in theories where they start connecting something to something else, like some line
Like
in FNAF 2 or like the books especially.
everything
And
being a
then
dream.
yeah, as an example, I guess. And then once you point something out that really contradicts it, it starts becoming just making up evidence.
Yeah,
It's like this backtracking.
yeah. That's kind of the thing I have a problem with, which is like I like if that's what you think and that makes the story cool for you, I don't have any issue. I don't care. It's a matter of discussion. Like, oh, hey, this is what I think, you know? And at that point, oh, if you're wanting to talk about this, well, what do you think about this? Doesn't that contradict what you said? Oh, it doesn't? How? Well, that's kind of weird because that requires a whole lot of external information. What about what's shown in the thing itself?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of a very popular thing that MatPat suggested was, what if the first four games didn't actually happen? Which is kind of a misinterpretation of what VR says.
Yeah.
And what that one, it all comes from that one book about this game developer who doesn't know anything and he makes the games. But it's like he dies while making the fourth game, so that it already like suggests that the games that they create are different from the ones we see in the real world and probably even different from the ones in VR. And when I pointed this out to someone, they were like, oh, well, they just hired a second developer. And it's like, okay,
Yeah, but
where
where
did
was
that
that
come
brought up?
from?
Yeah.
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 Because it's just trying to force it to work. And I feel like there's a lot of, I feel like what you say just works. Like
Yeah.
it just, like Gregory playing Fnaf VR just explains so much shit he says in the game. Like so much.
Right. And like it also makes sense because Gregory would be familiar with the series because he's like, "Oh, a stupid Mr. Hippo magnet." Like you wouldn't know about Mr. Hippo if you didn't know about FNAF, or about Freddy Fazbear Entertainment. he's definitely somebody that's like a little bit more involved, but it's obviously not just explained to you because that's the fun part of it is the mystery.
Yeah, and like it almost connects them more to the crying child, and I feel like that kind of what trips people up is that they are trying to parallel things with like things that happened earlier in the story, but they're not saying it's literally the same character. Like I feel like people have a big issue with symbolism and like metaphors in the story.
Right. I actually think that's a great example of something to talk about. So like Gregory being the crying child is always kind of silly to me because it's like you go back to the original series and like the main motivation that William Afton has is that he lost his family and he kind of wants them to all he wants to bring them all back together. And that's something that's expressed so many times throughout the original series. Um so you come into this and you're basically getting a new William Afton plot. Um I'm willing to like the way that I see it, he did die at the end of the original series. The end of it, he's dead, he's gone, he's done. But in this, it's kind of based off of okay, well, what if William Afton, like the way that his soul bound to the animatronic was at a level that when it was scanned it became digitized. It's like, okay, that's cool. That's sick. Okay, and now that he does this, he's influencing people. He's brainwashing people through VR goggles. Okay. And this is established. Um so when he influences these people and his main motivation throughout the whole series is bringing back his whole family, bringing back the things that he lost. I feel like it isn't too far of a jump to say that when he's influencing these people, he's imprinting them as if they're his children, and even putting that like persona onto them.
I mean, you could even almost think of it in a way that Glitch Trap is not really William Afton, but the idea of who he was,
Mm-hmm.
which is why, like, in the ending of Security Breach, when we see him, his endoskeleton's entirely different
Yeah,
because it's more about like the idea of who he was rather than it literally being him, which means it doesn't really retcon what the ending of the original series was,
yeah,
but it's
no,
like a different entity, and it kind of fits with this idea of characters being selected to be a part of this recreation of the family, which also fits with just the whole brand of Freddy Fazbear of trying to recreate that original magic.
right,
You know,
exactly. Like it just like that's the insane thing. You start talking about this the way that I feel like I saw it, the way that I started interpreting it, and it goes, wow, this all just fits. Like everything just pulls together thematically, and I don't know. It's probably part of the reason why I enjoyed this game a lot more than other people, because I've heard people talk all kinds of crazy things. Like the gameplay is glitchy and buggy. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I play video games, I can look past that. Oh, the story is clunky, and I'm like, I don't know, man. This story is kind of based. Like it kind of works really well off the thing that I loved about the previous game. Because all of these details just fit together. Um, I'm not sure if there's anything else we need to go over.
yeah. Security breach solved.
Security breach solved. I think that this is a solid stamp on here. Oh, there's just always all these little details that people point out as to why this could possibly not be the case. I just got reminded of this because what the video brought up. Um, I think that like also William Afton influencing Gregory makes sense as to why he's now homeless, because perhaps he killed his parents under the influence of William Afton.
Yeah, I never even thought of that, but that makes so much sense with like why his parents would be missing and why like Gregory is described as having good parents, you know?
Yeah,
Like what happened to them is like a question I feel like people don't really question that much.
yeah. And then even with that, you go, uh, why does he have the same outfit as the crying child? Well, if he was brainwashed by Afton to be a replacement for his child, uh, why wouldn't he dress him the same? Well, why didn't he change? Well, he just got deprogrammed at that moment. Like that's the game starts as Gregory is now Gregory and no longer what the books call Doctor Rabbit, which Doctor Rabbit is so funny because it's obviously a name reference to Doctor Robot, the TV show, which is just
So
a
you're proving Gregbot right now?
Craigbot. Uh, no, it's just Doctor Robot is about an autistic guy who's a hacker.
Oh, that's funny. So we're confirming autistic Gregory now. I see.
Exactly. Um, but yeah, hopefully more people will see this. Hopefully everybody will watch to the end, and that will do great for me. I know Linguistic has plans, and I keep bugging him about making his FNAF 4 theory video.
Yeah, it's gonna go hard. I might just make it. Might be interesting to make it multiple videos where I explore multiple interpretations of the story,
I think
rather
that
than
would be
my
great.
plan to have like just one interpretation as one video. You know, because I think what makes FNAF 4 in particular so interesting is that there's so many ways to interpret what's going on, and there's so many details that are just like insane.
Oh yeah, I think it's one of the coolest games. I think it was the coolest one before Help Wanted came out. um, I guess that's another thing I should point out. Like the reason my last so part of the there's a few issues with the video I made before, which was I forgot that I need to structure it a bit more like a theory video where I restate the same thing that my theory is Gregory is a kid who played FNAF VR as a tester. And I didn't express that enough in there, and that led to some confusion for some people. Um, Another thing is like I'm making a lot of jokes in that are aimed at the FNAF community because I think they're a little bit silly. I think they take themselves a little too seriously and they don't have enough fun with theories. Every theory is aimed to solve FNAF and not just like discuss FNAF. And I think it's messed up because that's what MAtPat's goal is. His stated goal is that he wants you to talk about it and think about it more. Um, but a lot of people just take it as this is the answer rather than a starting point for discussion. Other than that, yeah. Uh, Check out Linguistic Spaceship stuff. Thank you for helping me and joining me on this.
Yeah, no problem.
I definitely wanted to make sure that people saw that or heard the story and had someone there that was there watching me play it as I came to this theory and was there
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean, you were
ride with me.
Gregory, and I was Glamrock Freddy.
Exactly. Um, Anyways, yeah, that's it. Bye.